Hi, everyone. Deborah Hamilton, Hamilton Law and Mediation, the Why Do Pets Matter podcast, which, if you've missed any of the recent episodes, they're absolutely fabulous, especially with the new intro that my wonderful son Drew put together. And also, of course, this wonderful MAAP community. I'm so glad to see Connie Kohler join us, and we are really going to have an interesting discussion tonight. Hey, Sally, how are you? First of all, I have new glasses, so that will turn the tide today because we have new glasses, which are quite bright. But my husband loves them, so there you go.
Good.
So they
Well, the
work out
main
really
thing is,
well.
can
How
you
are
see
you guys
us?
doing tonight?
All okay here.
Great. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood on the East Coast. Connie, how's it doing on the West Coast?
It is absolutely gorgeous, high 60s, bright sunshine, and just absolutely splendiferous.
So we're all glad to be alive today. I have to tell you that as I was living my day today, for the first time in my life, I did an arbitration, which of course arbitrators can't talk anything about what they did because it's a confidential process and they have to make their own decision. But it made me realize that I don't talk enough about the 7Ds, the one that starts with divorce, because really we think about making a plan for our pets if we contract a disease or if we die or if we're disabled, we break an arm or a leg, the disaster, right, Connie, the fires, and Sally, the hurricanes. So we have the disaster. We can be delayed on an airplane, not recently, but we could. Hi, Susan, how are you? So all these things are what I usually talk about, and I sometimes touch upon um, divorce. But I have to tell you, divorce and relationship breakup now is making up 90% of my practice because people are just so angry and hurt at the relationship breakup that they really do not um, have the interests of the animal at heart when they're thinking about what comes next. And I'd love to hear what all of you think because this is an important topic. It was interesting the other day. I was speaking to a bunch of veterinarians and I said, it takes courage for a client to tell you what happened in the office, what they were thinking. And one person raised their hand and said, courage is a double-edged sword. It can sometimes be thought of differently. And I wanted to appreciate that they brought that to my attention, that was a trigger word for them, because it isn't a trigger word for me. I love the word courage because I think we all have to be courageous, especially now. However, it is often a trigger word when relationships break up. If you say, well, what about shared custody? And quite frankly, in my experience, shared custody does work. You simply need to be able to move on with your life, understanding that this relationship didn't work out. Um, well, almost the first case I ever had in mediation was a couple who kept stealing their dogs out of the backyard of each other because they couldn't figure out a way to share them. So they'd come in the middle of the night for last outs, and then the dog would be gone. And imagine the fear in the person who let the dog out to pee, and the dog not coming in again, and then having to call the other person who may or may not respond. And it was terrible. And I have to tell you, it took me a year and a half to mediate that agreement. However, those two people are probably my greatest assets in telling everyone what I do because they both thought they would never get to agreement. But I helped them understand that it was okay for one person to feel this one and another person to feel this way and one person to leave the relationship and the other one not understanding why. There's a lot of reasons why people don't stay together. And it's heartbreaking at the time. However, being able to make sure the animal has a caregiver is key. And I know that a lot of my litigation cohorts say just give the dog to one person and be done with it. But it's in the 7Ds for a reason. You have to make a plan for it. And quite frankly, I know I'm a broken record and I apologize. Unfortunately, your pet doesn't hate your ex. So I'm married. Sally's married. I believe Susan is married. Is that correct, Susan? You're muted. Are you married? You're
Yeah,
married, right?
I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah. So, and Connie is no longer married. However,
Well, I'm in the throes of a divorce due to a horrible family medical situation
right.
and a conservatorship, which is horrible.
Yeah. And family issues come up, and that's, how people treat people is not to be believed. However,
Absolutely.
the dogs are often uh, used as pawns in these relationships, especially when you don't have kids. Most of the people who are in my office don't have children and have a dog. Or I have one couple who got a dog from a breeder and thought they were, grow it in clover because you were going to get $2,000 for every litter that this girl had. And they didn't read any of the contract, so they didn't understand what was going on. And now it's really a difficult situation. It's a big contract issue. Um, so for me, when I talk to people who get pets when they love each other, I say, please God, sit down and write the agreement that you know will benefit the dog right now, not what you want to have the dog do because of the fact that you no longer like Deborah and you don't want Deborah in the dog's life at all. I get that. However, there are ways to share dogs. I mean, Google Calendars have become my go to. People use Google Calendars as a go to. And there are um, groups like Rover who will come and take your dog. And, I have people who drive a half a mile from the other person's house, but they never want to see them again, right? And then Rover goes the half a mile to the house and then picks up the dog and drives the half a mile to meet the person in like a shopping center, and they get the dog. Now, it seems ridiculous. I mean, really? But if that's what it takes so that there's no angst and anxiety, that's what it takes. And then you get to see the dog. And it's interesting how people say, well, the dog does so much better with me because I take it on long walks and I take it mountain climbing and I take it to the ocean to swim and, I take it to the groomer. And I can honestly say, and I'm sure all of you can say, that there are times when your dogs are just as happy laying on the couch with the couch potato as they were climbing the mountain with the athletic person. I interviewed somebody on Why Do Pets Matter who said her Rhodesian Ridgeback loves time with his father because time with his father means sitting back, drinking beers, watching football. And the dog loves it. But he's a triathlete with his mother. So it doesn't mean that he loves his mother more or his father less. It's that it's a whole different set um, of relationships. So, Kieran is getting on, and I want to say that in his responsible dog ownership, I think I'm going to ask them to put in a clause that asks what's going to happen to the dog if you guys don't stay together, so that question can be answered even before the dog is adopted. As a responsible owner, if something happens to you, what's going to happen to the dog? And really work on that piece. It's frustrating to me because most of the time, the owners will take the time to tell me how difficult it was to live with the other party. And I can raise my hand, and I'm sure anyone who's been married can raise their hand and say that there have been difficult portions of our lives with our significant others. And if we're still with them, we navigated them. And if we're not with them, we're better off without them or whatever. But I know that I would really know my husband would be very upset without an Irish setter, and I know that Sally would know that Gordon would be inconsolable without an Irish setter, and I'm sure that the Catan has a safe space in your husband's heart as well, Susan.
Yeah.
And because of your husband's disability, it's unfortunate you couldn't share, and that's what really caused the breakup for you, Connie. The way the family handled the disability. So it really it was different. But I just think that those kind of decisions need to be made while everyone is still friends, because once you become enemies, it's really hard to do what's right for the dog. Because I know that Athena loves Gordon and Roxy loves Jim, and so does Junie, sort of. And everybody's dog loves everybody. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox a little bit now, but I have to say that it's been so difficult for me for the past 3 or 4 weeks because everybody is walking through my office or people who are being referred to me, and I'm thankful and grateful. But nobody, when I talk to them, I say, well, what would you have done 6 months ago before the two of you broke up? well, we would have shared the dog because we liked each other. But that's not the way it is now. And I said, well, that's not the dog's fault. It's not the cat's fault. It really is, something you have to work out. So I'd love to hear what you guys think, because I know there are other thoughts to this, whether or not you should just, poison your ex. That's always a possibility, but I think there's probably laws against that. I'm almost sure there are, but that wouldn't help the dog either, because again, they would lose their other parent. So what do you think? Sally, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
Well, I'm hopeful that I'll stay together with my husband forever and ever, and we'll always have one fabulous Irish setter. But our next door neighbors, interestingly enough, have two college age kids, and they both have boyfriends and are in California, and they have no money. And they're like, well, how are we going to make ends meet? And all of a sudden, one boyfriend gets a note. An elderly woman that he befriended is leaving half the estate to him and half the estate to the family. But first, X amount of dollars goes to the dog. And they're like, what do you mean? And they go, yes, whoever gets the dog gets this much money. And they go, have you ever heard of that? I go, yes, I have.
As a matter of fact.
So, yes. So,
yeah. People are going to do that. And what we always preach, like a broken record, is make sure you tell those people, not that it comes as a surprise when the will is read, that, by the way, you have to take care of the dog and you'll get this much money. You really need to talk about it first and put those people on notice so they can make sure that everyone takes care of the pets the way they're supposed to. So that's a great story, Sally. And I know you and I both will likely stay with Gordon and Jim forever because, well, we've got them almost trained, and so why would we want to trade them in for a newer model? I don't want to have to train. I'd have to go through one of those tests with Kieran, responsible husband ownership. How do you do that? It would be a bunch of questions, and I don't want to have to answer them because I probably answer them wrong. So, Susan, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, it's very interesting that you mentioned that people who don't have children tend to argue over the dog, and the dog becomes the
surrogate child.
Yeah, and I don't know if this can have emotional effects on the dog or make the dog, have problems or.
It really does, because the dog picks up. So first of all, I'll tell you that my dog, Roxy, has COVID brain. Ever since we started COVID, I have, every time somebody walked by me with a dog or without, I'd pull her close to me because we were supposed to social distance, right? And she always said hello to everybody. But every time since last March, we went out for a walk. If somebody walked by, I would pull her close to me. I'd pull Junie close to me too, but he's a guy. And there are no brain cells in active reflex. Sorry, Kieran. I don't mean you. I just mean my dog, Junie. So it didn't bother him whether I pulled him next. And he really wasn't interested in other people anyway. Roxy liked to say hello. So now, after a year of that, she actually starts to growl when people walk up to us because she's thinking that there's something that mommy is afraid of with these people because she's pulled me so close that I'm going to start growling when they're about 25 feet away. So now I have Cujo on the end of the leash, and I created it, and I know I created it, and I call it COVID brain, and I apologize to the people as she's, gnashing her teeth to try to rip them to shreds. And I created it because of the way in which I trained her for the past year when people walk by. So you're right. They do absolutely feel whatever emotion is going down that leash. I always tell the people, I don't know if any of you have heard about Fear Free, but Dr. Marty Becker started Fear Free veterinary clinics where they do certain things and use certain pheromones so that your pets are less anxious at the vet. And I said to him, this is all really great. I said, I love this. I said, when are you going to start training the other end of the leash to be fear free? I said, because the animals come in with the personalities of the owners. So if the owners don't like the doctors or the owners don't like the vets or the owners had a bad experience with a vet last time, you really need to make sure you spend as much time on one end of the leash as the other. So you're right, Susan, they do pick up on that emotion. And quite frankly, they miss the couch potato when they're always with the triathlete. And they miss the triathlete when they're always with the couch potato. And it's okay to say, well, I don't ever want to see them again, but the dog or cat really does.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot to think about, and
address early.
Right, that it should be addressed before people get into that mode. And I'm sure COVID has contributed to a lot of stress in households, people getting along and that sort of thing.
Well, in relationships, some people had to go home because they couldn't afford to stay where they were. So relationships were broken up. And then one person kept the dog and then the other person left. And then the other person came back and thought they'd go right back to where they were. And it's like, no way. And we just get so polarized so quickly that it makes it difficult for the pets. And I'm sure, Connie, for you, it was a little bit different, but I'm sure your dogs had fun with your husband before he had the stroke.
They adored him. They absolutely adored him. In fact, I would always know when he was coming home. He retired a year after I did and then went back to work because he was like a caged lion. And they couldn't replace him as a program director in aerospace. And we were both professional colleagues as well as long-term spouses, and they would go nuts when he'd walk in the door. If I was off showing one, he would stay with the other two, and they were perfectly content, to stay with Dad. In fact, he was on his way out to join me in Palm Springs for a show weekend. I had my younger girl out there already. He was going to bring the older girl out, and he had a stroke the morning he was going to leave, and followed by two more. And just to let everybody know what the family circumstances are, his daughters, by a previous marriage, they were in college when we were married 33 years ago, have been against the marriage from the beginning. And so when he went down, that was their opportunity to break the marriage. To make a long story short, they are now his permanent conservators. And in my case, the fight over the dogs is not over the dogs per se, it's over their assumed monetary value because they're all show dogs. However, and of course, I'm making all these buckets of money over all these years.
I know about those buckets of money.
Right. The last litter I had was 2 years ago. My boy Casey, who is lying behind me. At any rate, they are assuming that a retired grand champion at age 11, who has been spayed for 5 years, and her daughter at my feet, another retired grand champion, age 7, who's been spayed for 2 years, have, this great monetary value. And my 2-year-old boy, the grandson, is just going to get back to working on his championship this weekend because dog shows are finally reopening in Southern California. So, in fact, I just got through doing a preliminary groom, so I'm probably full of dog hair. But at any rate, that is a different rub in a divorce situation where you have show dogs and they are assumed by unknowledgeable people to be, worth a gazillion dollars, and they're not. In fact, as you know, Deborah, very well, having a show dog and being a
boat
breeder is a sinkhole for money to go down.
Yeah, it's like a boat. It's a hole in the water. Exactly. You pour money in. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So actually, during Discovery, when I saw the request for general ledgers and my business license and all the litter records I had and blah blah blah, I cracked up. And they don't exist, so I didn't have to produce them.
Yeah, what's really sad is that I'm sure your husband, who's recovering from a stroke, and whether or not he's had any faculty impact from having the strokes.
Oh, he's had a lot, which is hard.
Probably misses the dogs terribly.
Yes, he does. In fact, Bammy, my 11-year-old, who's the grandma, is a certified therapy dog, and I brought her to his rehab center.
Yeah.
And she crawled into bed with him, and he was so delighted he couldn't stand it. The whole thing is horribly tragic.
And just to think that, here he is trying to recover, and he's not with the dogs who are his dogs. And I know people always think they're doing the right thing. However, denying somebody the ability to see a dog, not you, but really the circumstances that you're under, is really impacting him negatively, and it would impact anybody negatively.
Absolutely.
So it really is crazy. So, hey, Kieran, you want to weigh in here? Because you're the only guy who can, step up. I truly think every guy, every woman should keep the dog and see the dog. It's interesting that I have both sides of the scenario where the woman kept the dog and where the guy kept the dog. It's always, oh, by the way, this time I'm not transferring the dog. What do you think, Kieran? Because you do that responsible dog ownership packet, which we haven't caught up yet. So shame, shame, shame on both of us. I've read it too. So I was like, oh, Kieran's going to call. So I have to read this. But really to have a responsible owner or two, because you're here on the MAAP plan, because you want to make sure that the dog not only has a responsible owner and the primary owner, but responsible ownership backup, that would be part of it, don't you think?
I came in late, Deborah, but I did catch what you were saying earlier. And if you have a paragraph or two, there is a mention of the MAAP plan in the back.
Yeah.
And
and I'm going to send it to you, absolutely. But
yeah,
when you came on, I was saying, and there's Kieran, and this is what I'm going to say. In it, really, responsible ownership would require, possibly, if you're married, will you be able to share this dog with your spouse, or would you choose not to? And it's not saying that one is better than the other. Total transparency, I truly think the dog does better seeing both family members, not just one. However, if that's what you work out and that's what impacts everyone best, that would be great. But why can't we spend a little time thinking, well, Kieran, you and I are married and we love our dog, but if we get divorced, why don't I take the dog, and then when I go on vacation and one weekend a month, I will make sure the dog and you stay together. And that might be totally okay for you because you've worked it out before you get to the point where you want to make sure you get 50-50, because you really don't want to get 50-50. You simply want to get 50-50 so I don't get more than 50%. It's not that you want 50%, you just don't want me to get more than 50%. And that's what's driving this in my practice is I just want to make sure that I get more than you.
Yeah, and it's it's quite
the conundrum.
Well, it's sort of the nature of disputes. If you've two parties that are reasonable enough, they can usually work out anything. And then if one feels they have to win, well, then they'll use anything to, the kids, the dog, you name it. That's another weapon.
Yep. Well, that's again the statement I always use. I'd rather get it right than be right. But most people start their discussions with, I'm right because.
Yeah. So Debbie, whatever you want in there will go in there.
Perfect. I am going to put it in. I'll make a note for myself.
Right. Just a couple of things, Debbie. I sent you an email about 20 minutes ago. And it has a couple of updates, including the review. Some of the reviews have come back and they're excellent.
Oh, fabulous.
And we're changing the book a little bit in that all of the illustrations will be in full color.
Wonderful. Oh, that's going to be fabulous.
And the next big plus, I'll just mention it, which is we're going to hold all of the prints, and we would like to see them going as a sort of an exhibition on tour in the countries where the book will be sold. And it'll be called the Freedom Exhibition, with the idea of this will aid rescue shelters to get the dogs out of the cages.
Yep.
The artist, as you know, and I've sent a little bit about her, she's quite a famous artist, and she documented Chernobyl for 10 years after the explosion. So it's it's more than just a book. There's an enormous amount of detail and effort gone into it. So the way things are happening, I have the feeling it will make an impact quite quickly.
Oh, I'm sure it will, because everyone wants to know what dog ownership takes. Yeah. So here we are talking about the 7 Ds, but one of the things that usually doesn't come up in the conversation, which is what we've talked about here on the MAAP plan, is what is the responsibility of dog ownership?
Yeah.
Most of us get dogs without really knowing what that responsibility is. And I know Connie and I have talked for a long time, and chime in here anytime you want, Connie, about the mentorship that's required as a good breeder to the people you're selling your dogs to.
Absolutely. And
go ahead.
That is especially true, for instance, as you well know, if one of your pups as an adult, for instance, comes down with a disease, then you become the go-to person to advise the owner how to deal with the vet, especially if it is a breed-specific genetic disease. So that is absolutely a true statement. I'm dealing with a situation now with one of Patsy's litter sisters, where the vet diagnosed Zoe, the sister, with protein-losing nephropathy, which is one of our 2 or 3 genetic diseases in the breed, and yet the entire litter was genetically clear for the PLN alleles. So I have been consulting with the University of Pennsylvania Vet School, who is our National Breed Club's go-to advisor and research arm for PLN and PLE, the protein-losing enteropathy. And so I have been the intermediary between the owner and Penn Vet and the veterinarian up in Ventura, California. So you do that, absolutely.
You absolutely have to.
Mentorship on all fronts.
Well, it's interesting. I got a call from a breeder who had an owner say that her 4-month-old puppy seized. And I don't know enough about epilepsy, but I know in my breed, it's there somewhere. This is a different breed. And, you can do the best you can, but it's in the genetic pool, and which end of the pool you dive into means whether or not you have a double up or something like that and comes out. So it was interesting. I was speaking to a vet later on after I talked to this person to talk her off the ledge. She, of course, it's where we go. So here we are, we're breeders. We're very protective of our pedigrees. We really want to educate people. Sometimes we're a little bullish on our opinions, and sometimes we need outside influences to calm us down a little. So I calmed her down a little and I said to her, "What is it you want?" She goes, "I want the puppy back." I said, "So how do you think you're going to get there?" And she goes, "Well, I'm just going to tell her to give me the dog back." And I said, "Well, that might work. Probably won't. However, why don't we talk about how impactful this has been on her and her family, because the dog is seizing. And you are so saddened by this, because this wasn't what anybody anticipated when they took the dog home 2 months ago at 8 weeks. And you really would prefer to just refund her purchase price and take the dog back and maybe add some money for the vet bills for taking care of it. But this kind of mentorship and this kind of conversation allows you to support the people who are buying your dogs where they are. If you want the dog back because you really want to monitor if the dog really has epilepsy or not, it has come to my attention that no dog can be diagnosed with epilepsy at 4 months of age. So that's something, of course, I didn't know because, knock on wood, I have never had an epileptic dog that I bred. I had one that I adopted from the North Shore Animal League back in 1983, right after I graduated from law school. She was epileptic, but otherwise I haven't had any. And so I would not have known. And this woman didn't think she had epilepsy in her pedigree either. And of course, what's really interesting as an owner, and this is for you too, Kieran, as an owner, as a responsible owner, how do you approach the breeder in a way that they don't take on that defensive reactive tone? Because you said, "Oh my God, you bred a sick dog." Okay, so I'm always going to say that's not always the best sentence to start the conversation with. And if the breeder is able to hold themselves in a safe place when somebody comes up and says something like that to them, if they can just say, "Well, tell me a little bit more," not, "Who do you think you are? I've bred these dogs for 100 years and I've never had epilepsy and my dogs are, and you're crazy." And so then we're off to the races in like 90 miles an hour, off to the races in different goings, and it's terrible. But if you can be curious and you can listen for understanding, you sometimes can find out what's going on. So what I did with this person was I actually helped her craft her second conversation, because her first conversation was the one that went off to the races in a million directions. But the second one was not so much like that. It was more of an appreciative and acknowledging and problem solving. So she actually got the dog back. And she actually is going to take care of the dog and see if it really has epilepsy, or if, as I suspect, it may have slammed its head into a wall because, puppies, it's a sporting dog. So puppies in the sporting breed do tend to run into walls when they're young.
Yes, they do.
And so they
having had English setters,
right.
I know it well. But there are also other causes of epilepsy, which can be totally environmental.
Right. He could have gotten into anything.
Exactly. I don't know if you're aware that North Carolina State Vet School is doing doing a study on diet and GI dysfunction and triggering epileptic seizures in all breeds.
Wow, I'm going to get that one.
Yeah.
You'll have to send me the link, and we'll put it up on the MAAP Plan website so that
I'll have to try to find it. But it was actually posted in our Wheaton Health Matters Facebook group, and I'll have to go look for it. And the sysadmin of the group is a very good friend of mine who lives right here in Orange County, so I can certainly get it from her.
I appreciate that because every time we learn something new, it really forestalls how we live with our pets. So Susan's working on her MAAP plan to make sure she gets it done. How's the trainer going for you, Susan?
I ended up looking at Blockbusters, and they have a very long wait list. So I'm just waiting for them to call me to say we can get started. The other company I looked at, they use a collar with I just wasn't sure whether that was going to be the best way to work with my dog.
So you're in Westchester County, correct?
I'm in Fairfax County in Virginia.
Oh, Virginia, yeah. So that's so far. But did you check online with Sarah Hodgins? Sarah Says?
No.
So Sarah Says is up here, but she has a lot of training videos on her website. So just go to Sarah Says. And if you can't find it, write to me. She's fabulous. She actually is worked on a number of people's dogs that I know and has really done a beautiful job. And she might be able, if she can't do it herself, she might be able to recommend you to someone who you might be able to move up in the line or something if that's possible. So it's Sarah Hodgson, Hodgdson, I believe.
Okay.
Sarah Says.
Okay, great.
So as you come to the top of the hour, are you doing your MAAP plan, my friend?
You're talking to me?
Yeah.
I have to admit, I have not, and I really will get.
Have you put your signs up on the refrigerator and the back door?
Not the back door.
Oh, come on. Those are the easy pieces. Those are the easy. Did you put it on the front door?
Well, I had a sign up and it's come down, but
I get that. That happens to me all the time.
I promise to get,
Well, don't promise
I'm bad.
Don't promise me, promise Maggie, right? So that she knows that she's not going to go to an animal care and control if God forbid something happens.
I fully appreciate that. And
we want to make sure Maggie's safe.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're safe, so everybody knows.
Yeah. I will be working on this. I will.
Well, just put those signs up by next Wednesday, and then I'll be doing the happy dance over here next Wednesday when you tell me, yes, I put the Post-it note up.
Okay. Fair enough.
And have you updated yours, Connie, yet? I know you've been really busy.
I am in the throes of it, and we have yet again another melodrama going on in our national club.
Oh my God! Well, if I can be of any assistance, I'm happy to help because they were wonderful people.
You may be. We're trying to spin off our rescue group, and I'll talk to you offline about that. But at any rate, I am certainly working on it, and the main thing is I've got the main body.
Your signs are up in your house?
Absolutely. In fact, Susan, you can get pressure sensitive signs that go right on the glass in your door from AKC Reunite, or you can get them, anywhere.
At Home Depot?
Probably, but you can put them right in your door. They're pre-printed. You just fill in the information.
Staples. Yeah, because what you want to do is you want to go to Staples or Home Depot and ask them where those pressure sticky things, they're not glue, but they're pressure sticky, and they go right on, and then you just write on them.
And you just write on them, right.
I might have to put some Hamilton Lawn Mediation logo MAAP on there somewhere. I'm going to have to find a supplier to do that. Sally, how about you? Updated?
I'm working on it. I had a little bit of glitch this past 2 weeks. A girlfriend had a baby and I was the significant other because everyone else is out of the country. So set me back a tiny bit, but I'm working on it. Thank you.
Good, wonderful. Kieran, how about you? You don't have any pets with you in Tenerife. I'm still
No.
jealous you're there.
No.
When are you heading back to Ireland, if ever?
Yeah, that's the correct answer.
I understand, because right now, actually, you don't have to be to Ireland to actually work out of Ireland. So it's a good thing.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad you're all here. I'm going to let you all go at 7:05. Again, make sure you've made a MAAP plan for your pets. Make a plan, address the needs of your pet, appoint caregivers, and publish it. And until next week, when Kieran and I are going to give you, I think, a little sneak peek of the cover of the book, so you can all wait in anticipation for the book. I look forward to seeing you all. Give your dogs and other animals kisses for me. They're all dogs on this thing, so that's good. So all the little Wheatons and the Irish Setter and the Catan, who I love. And until next week, this is Deborah Hamilton, Hamilton Law and Mediation, the Why Do Pets Matter podcast, and of course, this wonderful MAAP community. Take care.